Welcome to a deep dive into Operation Granite, a case that has raised serious questions about police conduct and investigative independence. Today, we explore a formal complaint submitted by Lawrence Kurt solicitors on behalf of Mr. Mark Cohen, highlighting alleged failures by West Midlands Police. This video will walk you through the core issues, the legal framework, and the specific complaints raised. By the end, you'll understand why this case is so significant for public confidence in policing and the standards expected of law enforcement. Complaint addressed to the Professional Standards Department of West Midlands Police alleges misconduct, lack of investigative independence, disclosure failures, and poor supervision. The officers named include DC Jennifer Claire Lee, DC Lee Witchley, DC Alexis Wood, and Superintendent Ian Parnell. The complaint asserts that these officers and their supervisors failed to uphold the standards required of public officials, especially after a warrant for illegal entry was quashed. These allegations, if proven, could amount to gross misconduct. Complaint outlines 10 core concerns, including failure to maintain investigative independence, improper reliance on private organisations, and failure to pursue reasonable lines of inquiry. Other issues include disclosure failures, lack of supervision, and potential breaches of Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Each concern points to a breakdown in the expected standards of police conduct, raising questions about fairness, objectivity, and public trust. Understand the gravity of these complaints. It's important to consider the legal framework. The Police Reform Act 2002, Police Act 1996, Criminal Procedure and Investigations Act 1996, and the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 all set out clear duties for police officers. These laws require officers to act independently, retain and disclose relevant material, and ensure fairness throughout investigations. The Human Rights Act 1998 and Article 6 ECHR further guarantee a fair process and equality before the law. Police officers are bound by the College of Policing Code of Ethics, which demands integrity, honesty, fairness, objectivity, and accountability. The National Decision Model guides officers in gathering information, assessing risk, and making justified decisions. The Police Conduct Regulations 2020 further outline duties, responsibilities, and the need to challenge improper conduct. These standards are not just guidelines, they are essential for maintaining public confidence in policing. Background reveals that before police took over, private organisations like Edmunds Marshall McMahon Solicitors, Taylor Wessing LLP, and Repton Security conducted extensive investigative work for McLaren Construction Group plc. These private entities gathered intelligence, engaged witnesses, and analysed evidence. The complaint argues that West Midlands Police became overly reliant on these organisations, failing to independently verify or scrutinise their findings, which could compromise the integrity of the investigation. One of the most serious allegations is the failure to maintain investigative independence. Police are expected to act impartially, but the complaint suggests that officers may have simply accepted the work of private organisations without critical assessment. This undermines public confidence and raises the risk that investigative priorities and disclosure decisions were improperly influenced by parties with a vested interest in the outcome. National Decision Model requires officers to exercise their own judgment. The complaint highlights that over 6,700 files related to Operation Granite were not independently reviewed by police, but instead were accepted from private organisations. This lack of scrutiny is inconsistent with the Code of Ethics and undermines the standards of professional behaviour expected from law enforcement. Disclosure is a cornerstone of fair investigations. The complaint alleges that large quantities of material were held by private organisations and not properly disclosed or reviewed by police. This failure to identify, retain, and reveal relevant material could seriously compromise the fairness of proceedings and the rights of the accused. Another key issue is whether police independently reviewed material classified as privileged or irrelevant by private parties. Investigators cannot simply trust third-party classifications, they must ensure all relevant material is identified and preserved. The complaint points to a failure to review thousands of documents, which may have included evidence about other suspects. Criminal Procedure and Investigations Act requires police to pursue all reasonable lines of inquiry, including those that might support alternative explanations or suspects. The complaint suggests that the police focus too narrowly on the prosecution theory, neglecting evidence that could have supported the defence or challenged their assumptions. This neglect could amount to a serious breach of duty. Proper retention of all relevant material is essential for a fair investigation. The complaint alleges that not all material generated by private investigators and solicitors was retained or made available for review. This could compromise the fairness of the proceedings and must be carefully examined by the Professional Standards Department. Even the appearance of bias can undermine public confidence in policing. The complaint notes that much of the investigative work was privately funded and that disclosure decisions may have been influenced by interested parties. Whether or not actual bias existed, these circumstances create a perception of unfairness that must be addressed. Supervising officers have a duty to ensure compliance with disclosure obligations, investigative procedures, and ethical standards. The complaint suggests that failures of supervision contributed to the issues identified in Operation Granite. The Professional Standards Department is urged to investigate the role of supervising officers and whether proper oversight was exercised. Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights guarantees fairness and equality of arms in legal proceedings. The cumulative effect of the failures identified in this complaint raises concerns about investigative and disclosure fairness. Officers are required to act with integrity, comply with lawful procedures, and challenge improper conduct. Any conduct undermining public confidence may amount to discreditable conduct. Complaint formally requests that the Professional Standards Department investigate the relationships between officers and private organizations, compliance with disclosure and CPIA obligations, the handling of unused material, and supervisory oversight. It also asks whether referral to the Independent Office for Police Conduct is appropriate and seeks confirmation of the investigation's reference number, form, and the identity of the investigating officer. Conclusion: the matters raised in this complaint go to the heart of public confidence in policing, independence, objectivity, fairness, and integrity. The complaint calls for a full and independent investigation by an officer with no prior involvement or an external police force. Only through transparency and accountability can trust in the justice system be maintained. The outcome of this investigation will be closely watched by all who care about the rule of law.